The Underdog Challenge. The hangar bay echoed with the sound of welding torches and the occasional clang of metal as Captain Elara Wright circled the Phoenix for the 5th time that morning. Her weathered hands traced the ship's hull, feeling every weld and rift with the attentiveness of a parent checking a child for fever. The vessel wasn't pretty, not by galactic standards anyway. Its hull was a patchwork of materials, some sections gleaming with Earth's newest alloys, others clearly salvaged from decommissioned vessels. "They're calling us space junk with engines on the Galactic network," First Officer Marcus Chen said, approaching with a tablet in hand. His expression was a mixture of amusement and indignation. "The Arcturians have given us 10,000 to 1 odds against even completing the circuit." Elara snorted. "Let them talk. How's the reactor core?" "Dr. Patel says it's purring like a kitten." Her words, not mine. "We're at 97% efficiency, which is better than our test runs." The Phoenix represented humanity's first entry into the galactic velocity trials, the most prestigious racing event in the known universe. For over 15,000 years, the most advanced civilizations had competed in this grand demonstration of technological prowess. Humanity, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 30 years ago, was the youngest race ever invited to participate. Invited was perhaps too generous a term. The Galactic Council had extended the invitation after Earth's persistent lobbying, with most council members viewing it as an opportunity to teach the upstart humans their place in the cosmic hierarchy. "Captain Wright," a melodic voice called from across the hangar. Elara turned to see Ambassador Zilith of the Thanarian Collective gliding toward them. The Thanarians were an ancient race, their smooth, iridescent skin and elongated limbs the product of millions of years of evolution. Their ships were considered works of art, living vessels that grew rather than were built, capable of phenomenal speeds. "Ambassador," Elara nodded respectfully. "Come to wish us luck." Zilith's large, multifaceted eyes blinked in what Elara had learned was amusement. "Luck, an interesting human concept. I came to express my admiration for your courage. The velocity trials are not for the technologically immature. There would be no shame in withdrawing." Marcus stiffened beside her, but Elara maintained her diplomatic smile. "We appreciate your concern, Ambassador, but Phoenix is ready for the challenge." "Is it?" Zilith gestured at the ship with a sweeping motion. "Your propulsion system is rudimentary. Your hull materials are inconsistent, and I see no evidence of dimensional fold technology or quantum navigation systems. We've made some modifications of our own," Elara replied simply. "Yes, I'm sure you have." The ambassador's tone was indulgent, like an adult humoring a child's fantasy. "Well, may your Phoenix rise to the occasion. The ceremonial dinner begins in 3 hours. I trust you'll be there." "Wouldn't miss it for the world," Elara assured him. As Zilith glided away, Marcus muttered, "I'd like to see his face win." "Careful," Elara cautioned. "Remember the mission. We're here to learn, not antagonize." But even as she said it, Elara couldn't help but feel a flutter of anticipation in her chest. The Phoenix might look like a cobbled-together mess to alien eyes, but appearances could be deceiving. The ceremonial dinner that evening was held in a massive anti-gravity chamber aboard the Galactic Council's flagship. Representatives from 27 spacefaring civilizations mingled, their varied physiologies making for a stunning visual tapestry. The humans, Elara and her crew of 6, kept to themselves, partly by choice and partly because few other species made the effort to approach them. The KVAC ship has living pilots integrated into its neural network, Engineer Aisha Patel whispered, nodding toward a group of insectoid beings across the room. "They become one with the vessel during the race. How are we supposed to compete with that?" "By being unpredictable," Elara replied, sipping a fluorescent blue beverage that tasted vaguely of mint. "They've all been racing the same way for centuries. They've forgotten how to innovate." Chief Navigator Jordan Riley, the youngest crew member at 28, couldn't contain his excitement. Did you see the Meridian's quantum anchors? They can literally pull themselves through space-time like it's fabric, and burn half their energy reserves doing it, Marcus pointed out. Every technology has its limits. The lights dimmed slightly, signaling the start of the formal proceedings. Grand Marshal Xorix of the Primarchy, an ancient being that resembled a crystalline octopus suspended in a hovering tank of amber liquid, addressed the gathering. Distinguished racers, honored guests, the Marshal's voice resonated through translators. Tomorrow marks the 342nd Galactic Velocity Trials. As always, the race will test not merely speed, but efficiency, adaptability, and innovation. The Marshal's gelatinous form rippled in what might have been pride. This year, we welcome a new participant. The humans of Earth have joined our prestigious competition. Their civilization may be young, but their determination is admirable. There was polite applause, undercut by murmurs, and the occasional sound that Ilara's translator identified as laughter. The course has been set, Xorix continued, beginning at Arcturus Station, through the Cygnus Corridor, navigating the Helix Nebula, past the gravitational anomalies of the Taurus cluster, and returning to Arcturus. May the most worthy vessel prevail. As the gathering dissolved into mingling once more, Captain Kravnar of the Teslan Empire, a reptilian being with gleaming scales, approached the human contingent. "Captain Wright," he hissed, his long tongue flicking out to taste the air. "My crew has a betting pool on which section of the course will force your withdrawal. Care to provide insight? I could share the winnings." Ilara smiled coolly. "I'd put your credits on completion, Captain. You might be surprised." Kravnar's scaled brow ridge rose. "Brave words, but bravery doesn't bend physics to your will. Your ship's design is curious, almost as if you're using outdated principles intentionally." "Perhaps we are," Ilara said enigmatically. The Teslan captain studied her for a moment. "You're planning something," he decided. "Something unexpected." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "But understand this, human. The trials are not just a race. They determine technological hierarchies, trade advantages, and council influence for the next cycle. Some would find it disruptive if the established order were challenged." With that ominous statement lingering in the air, he departed, leaving the humans exchanging concerned glances. "Was that a threat?" Jordan asked. "A warning, at least," Marcus replied grimly. Ilara watched the Teslan captain's retreating form. "It seems we've got more riding on this race than we thought. Let's make our final preparations." Race day arrived with a spectacle of light and sound. The starting point, a massive space station orbiting Arcturus, was surrounded by thousands of observer vessels. The competing ships were arranged in a perfect arc, each positioned in a launch bay that would propel them simultaneously into the course. The Phoenix, assigned the outermost position, looked painfully out of place among the sleek, advanced vessels of the other competitors. The Thanarian living ship pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. The Teslan vessel was a perfect sphere of what appeared to be liquid metal. The Arcturian entry had no visible propulsion system at all, seeming to hover by sheer will. Inside the Phoenix's bridge, Ilara addressed her crew one final time before the start. "Remember, we stick to the plan. First phase, we conserve energy and observe. Let them think we're struggling to keep up. Second phase, we reveal our first surprise when we hit the Helix Nebula. Third phase, full capabilities in the Taurus cluster. Questions? There were none. Each crew member knew their role precisely. For Earth, then, Ilara said, settling into the captain's chair. For humanity, the crew responded in unison. The countdown began, transmitted across all ships through the standard frequency. Launch in 10, 9, 8. Ilara's hands tightened on the armrests of her chair. 3, 2, 1. Commence. 27 vessels shot forward in perfect synchronicity, their varied propulsion systems creating a dazzling display of energy signatures. The Phoenix's conventional thrusters put it immediately at the back of the pack, a position that surprised no one in the observing audience. Maintaining position at the rear, Marcus confirmed. Arcturian vessel has taken an early lead, followed by the Thenarians and Teslans. Engine efficiency, Ilara asked. Holding at 30% output, Aisha reported from engineering. We could give more, but stick to the plan, Ilara confirmed. Jordan, how's our course looking? The navigator studied his displays with intense concentration. The leaders are taking the mathematically optimal route through the Cygnus corridor. Standard approach. Ilara nodded. And what would you suggest? A slow smile spread across Jordan's face. There's a gravitational slipstream if we skirt the edge of the corridor. Riskier, but potentially faster. Make it so. The Phoenix veered slightly from the main group, a deviation that caused commentary among the race observers, but little concern from the competitors. After all, what could humans possibly know about navigating space that the elder races didn't? As they entered the Cygnus corridor, a relatively narrow passage of stable space between two turbulent regions, the Phoenix began to pick up speed. We're catching up to the Dorvian ship, Marcus noted with surprise. They're in 18th position. The slipstream is working, Jordan confirmed. We're using 22% less energy than if we followed the main group. For the next hour, the Phoenix gradually improved its position, overtaking several mid-pack vessels whose pilots regarded the human ship with confusion and, in some cases, growing concern. By the time they approached the Helix Nebula, a swirling mass of ionized gases and electromagnetic disturbances, the Phoenix had moved up to 15th place. We're entering Phase 2, Ilara announced. Aisha, bring the magnetic wave inverters online. Inverters active. Captain. Jordan, take us directly into the densest part of the nebula. The navigator looked startled. Captain, the interference will shut down conventional navigation systems. Ilara's expression was resolute. That's counting on conventional systems. Activate the analog backups. Understanding dawned on the crew's faces. While every other ship in the race relied on quantum positioning and AI-assisted navigation, the Phoenix had been equipped with modified versions of ancient Earth technologies, gyroscopes, accelerometers, and star trackers that were immune to the nebula's electromagnetic interference. As they plunged into the swirling gases, the other ships skirted the edges of the nebula, taking the longer but safer route. The Phoenix disappeared from their sensors, many assuming the humans had finally met their inevitable failure. Inside the nebula, bathed in the eerie glow of ionized gases, the Phoenix flew true, its crew navigating by means that would have been familiar to seafarers of Earth's distant past, albeit updated with modern materials and precision. Calculating exit vector, Jordan called, his hands dancing over manual controls rather than the usual holographic interfaces. Engineering reports all systems nominal, Aisha added. The magnetic inverters are actually drawing power from the nebula's own fields. We're recharging as we go. When the Phoenix burst from the other side of the Helix Nebula, it had jumped to 6th place, causing a sensation among the observers and consternation among the race leaders. The Teslan ship is hailing us, Marcus reported. Ignore it, Ilara ordered. We're about to enter the Taurus cluster. Prepare for Phase 3, turning the tables. The Taurus cluster loomed ahead, a treacherous region of space where dozens of collapsed stars created a maze of intense gravitational fields. It was the most challenging section of the course, where even the most advanced ships were forced to proceed with caution, carefully plotting courses between the gravitational wells. All hands, secure for gravitational fluctuations, Ilara commanded. Aisha, is the Newton drive ready? Yes, Captain. Although I still think the name is a bit on the nose. Ilara smiled. Sometimes the oldest ideas are the best ones. Activate when we cross the threshold. As the Phoenix entered the cluster, something remarkable happened. Instead of fighting against the gravitational pulls or navigating around them, The ship seemed to embrace them, its course becoming a graceful dance between the invisible forces. Where other vessels expelled enormous energy to counter the gravitational drag, the Phoenix used it, converting the very force that threatened to trap them into additional acceleration. Newton drive functioning at 120% expected efficiency, Aisha reported, her voice tinged with wonder despite having helped design the system. The real-world performance is better than our simulations. We're passing the Dorgian ship, Marcus announced. Now the Proxian vessel. Now the Arcturian ship. One by one, the Phoenix overtook the leaders, its unconventional approach to the gravitational fields proving dramatically more efficient than the brute force methods employed by the other racers. By the time they exited the Taurus cluster, they were in second place, trailing only the Thenarian living ship. The race observers erupted in chaos. Nothing like this had happened in the 342-year history of the trials. A primitive newcomer challenging the established powers. It was unthinkable. The Thenarian vessel is increasing power output, Marcus reported. They're pushing their biological systems to the limit. How long until the finish line? Ilara asked. Approximately 43 minutes at current velocity, Jordan answered. The Thenarian has about a 6-minute lead on us. Ilara considered their options. Aisha, what's our reserve capacity? After the energy we harvested in the Helix Nebula and the Taurus cluster, we're at 82% of total capacity. We could increase output significantly. And our final surprise. Aisha's grin was audible in her voice. Ready when you are, Captain. Very well. Ilara straightened in her chair. Let's show them what humans can really do. Activate the Edison coils. Deep within the Phoenix, a system that had remained dormant until now hummed to life. Based on principles discovered by Nikola Tesla and refined over centuries, the Edison coils created a localized distortion in space-time, not as dramatic as a true warp field, but enough to reduce the effective distance the ship needed to travel. The Phoenix surged forward, eating up the gap between itself and the Thenarian vessel at an alarming rate. Ambassador Zilith, serving as pilot of his race's living ship, pushed his vessel to its biological limits, the bioluminescent patterns along its hull flashing in distress as it struggled to maintain its lead. We're gaining, Marcus reported tersely. 2 minutes behind. Now 90 seconds. The finish line, a massive energy gate orbiting Arcturus station, grew larger in their view screen. The Phoenix continued to accelerate, the Edison coils creating a subtle ripple effect in the space ahead of them. 30 seconds gap, 20 seconds. They were neck and neck as they approached the final stretch. The Thenarian ship straining visibly, its biological systems never designed to maintain such output for extended periods. 10 seconds to finish line, Jordan called. In the final moments, the Phoenix pulled ahead, crossing the energy gate barely 5 seconds before the Thenarian vessel. The remaining competitors followed minutes later, their expected finishing order completely disrupted by the human ship's unexpected performance. Silence reigned on the Phoenix's bridge for several heartbeats before the crew erupted in cheers and embraces. They had done the impossible, a rookie entry winning the most prestigious race in the galaxy. The aftermath was immediate and far-reaching. The observation decks of Arcturus Station buzzed with shocked conversations in hundreds of languages. The Galactic network's coverage dissolved into chaos as commentators struggled to explain how a primitive human vessel had outperformed ships built by civilizations with thousands of years of spacefaring experience. As the Phoenix docked at Arcturus Station, a reception committee awaited them, not the celebratory group that would normally greet the winner, but a gathering of serious-faced officials led by Grand Marshal Sorex. Captain Wright, the crystalline being's translated voice was formal. Your vessel's performance was unexpected. But within the rules, Ilara replied firmly. That remains to be determined. This came from Captain Kravnar of the Teslans, his scale face tight with suppressed anger. We demand an inspection of this ship. They must have used prohibited technology. Ambassador Zilith, looking exhausted but composed, raised a slender hand. I witnessed their victory personally. It was illuminating. Before we make accusations, perhaps we should listen. Calrex's gelatinous form swirled contemplatively. Explain your methods, Captain Wright. Ilara nodded to Aisha, who stepped forward. It's quite simple, really. While advanced civilizations developed quantum folding, dimensional shifting, and neural integration, humanity took a different path. We looked to our past. She activated a holographic display showing the Phoenix's systems. Our magnetic wave inverters are based on technologies from Earth's 20th century, refined and perfected. The Newton drive uses gravitational forces the way ancient sailors used wind currents. The Edison coils apply principles discovered by a human scientist over 300 years ago. You're saying you won using obsolete science. Kravnar's disbelief was evident. No, Ilara corrected. We won by not assuming that newer always means better. Every civilization reaches a point where they stop questioning their foundations. You all became so focused on refining your existing technologies that you stopped looking for alternatives. The gathered aliens exchanged uncomfortable glances, the truth of her words striking home. Marshal Sorex's voice vibrated through the translators. The human vessel violated no rules. The victory stands. There was a pause, and then the Marshal added, perhaps it is time for a new perspective in our council meetings as well. As the officials dispersed, Ambassador Zillith approached Ilara privately. You concealed your true capabilities from the beginning. Ilara shrugged. We showed exactly what we had. You just didn't recognize it because it didn't fit your expectations. The Thanarian's multifaceted eyes studied her, a valuable lesson, one that will not be forgotten. He made a gesture that Ilara recognized as respect. Until the next race, Captain Wright. That evening, as celebrations continued across Arcturus Station, the crew of the Phoenix gathered in their ship's common area, sharing drinks and stories. To the underdogs, Marcus toasted, raising his glass. To human ingenuity, Aisha added. Ilara looked around at her crew, representatives of a young species that had just changed its standing in the galactic community forever. To remembering, she said finally, that sometimes the best way forward is to look back. As their glasses clinked together, millions of miles away on Earth, engineers were already designing the next generation of vessels, ships that would combine the wisdom of the past with the potential of the future. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again.